Bruce Feldman and Max Olson, theathletic.com. College football's transfer portal top 50, and there's a couple of familiar names. At the top is running back Eric Gray from Tennessee to Oklahoma. Tennessee was basically an Oklahoma farm team for the offseason of transfer portal. Bruce Feldman from theathletic.com, college football, joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. Bruce, first of all, thank you very much for your time. This is different, right, than eventually what you'll do with your Freaks list. When does that come out?
That won't come out until probably around July.
Okay.
So this is much different than that, yes.
Yep. So this is the transfer portal. We mentioned Gray at the top, but we did catch the attention of Siaki Ika from LSU to Baylor, and we saw him during their spring game and a couple of others. And, Bruce, I'm glad he's on this list and high because he looks like he's an absolute difference maker for Dave Aranda.
Yeah, big, dominant guy who just LSU changed schemes. And when they went away from the three-man front, it wasn't as good a fit for him. And now he's back with Aranda in that system, and I think he's going to cause a lot of havoc in the Big 12.
Bruce, which coaches have figured out the transfer portal best, like Lincoln Riley seems to have dominate it, and which ones do you think still need a little help?
I think it depends on what you're looking at, right? I mean, in LSU's case, they had Joe Burrow, who obviously is kind of the gold standard of what you're talking about in terms of it wasn't working out great at Ohio State. He goes to LSU, he leads them into a national title. And then they plucked and taken a kicker from a Division III school who ended up becoming basically an All-American caliber kicker that year. So it's like you're supplementing parts of your roster, and I think people have kind of seen that. Now, those are the, kind of the high-end examples. There's a lot of other cases where you're really just, hey, we need O-line depth, or we need help in the secondary. And I think certainly Lincoln Riley had success with Jalen Hurts as a transfer, and now we're seeing him take a running back, taking a chance on a former big recruit offensive lineman from Tennessee, and we'll see how it goes. Miami's had a lot of success with it. Jalen Phillips' career was kind of really, beneath the radar at that point. When he left UCLA, he goes to Miami, has a huge year, and becomes a first-round pick. And they had a lot of success in the portal again based on that. Tyreke Stevenson was the number 2 guy on our list. He's just a freaky athlete at cornerback. They take Charleston Rambo, who came from Oklahoma, and they think he had a great spring, and they took an edge rusher from Tennessee. So I think, that's a place where Manny Diaz has kind of made you can sell Miami, obviously, to a lot of transfers, too. So I think that has been a big selling point for them.
What was the flood of Tennessee players to Oklahoma, including the number 1 player on your list, and also Morris, Lawrence? I know you lost a couple as well, but what was it? Was that like almost just 3 guys that all like each other a lot, good friends, or what?
I think there was a lot of interest in Wanye Morris because he was a big recruit. He's a huge guy with good feet. Now there's some other challenges with him where in terms of focus and maturity and whatnot, Eric Gray did not have those. Eric Gray was a good all-around back who a lot of people were interested in. I just think in this regard, you had Tennessee, which, really felt like it was kind of that proverbial dumpster fire in the offseason. And that, I think people looked at it and said, we came here to play at a high level and it's not working out. Let's go somewhere where we can have a chance to become part of a playoff team. And, I think the fact that 2 of those guys are offensive guys and get to play for Lincoln Riley is a big selling point.
Bruce Feldman with us on Sikkim 365 Radio.
Do you see a bad team that got better enough to turn heads in the transfer portal?
You mean just because of 1 or 2 players, or?
Yeah, or that filled those gaps. A team that,
Yeah, one that's interesting, and it's funny, we're going to talk about them as a bad team because for a long time, they were great, but that was FSU. But they've been under 500 the last couple of years, and they have 4 guys on our list. Mackenzie Milton is the best known because he had so much success at UCF, the quarterback. But Jermaine Johnson came from Georgia, really good player, had a great spring. And there's 2 other defensive players that I expect to be starters. And I think that could lead them maybe to being a fringe top 25 team or closer to it compared to a program that's really, Mike Norvell is really struggling to kind of get some traction there.
Seems like Texas is now moving players to, Epps, the wide receivers going to USC, of course, Keontae Ingram. They have the great running back in Bijan Robinson. Is that right now? That will be unbelievable.
Bijan Robinson.
Bijan Robinson.
Special running back.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. Speaking of him, Bruce, it took forever like the last game. Where was, and I know Herman's no longer there, and I got Sarkisian there, but when I saw Robinson, one of the first times I saw him carry the ball, and Herman never was what you could consider running back friendly with getting the ball 15 or 20 times in a game. How explosive do you think he is? He jumped out at everybody finally in that bowl game.
Yeah, I mean, he looked like a difference maker for a program that really lacked them. People I talk to there think he could be a Heisman winner, and we'll see. They got to get better on the offensive line, but Steve Sarkisian has proved to be a really good offensive coach. Very interested to see if he can, how quickly he can get it going at UT.
Charlie Brewer, I like the guy a lot. I like the way he played at Baylor. I know last year was a disaster along a lot of ways offensively, and Dave Aranda's first year with Larry Fedora. I've had a chance to visit with him a couple of different times. Have you heard much from Utah on him? I've seen a couple of articles about how he's come on in there and basically just stepped right in as a leadership guy and also playing well in the spring.
Yeah, Chain seems to be fitting him well. Obviously, this will be the third offensive system in less than 3 years for him, but people are very encouraged here in the Pac-12 about what they saw from him. And, you know, there's Kyle Whittingham has had a bunch of transfers come in and out of there the last few years. So I think it's a good opportunity for him to bring some stability there because he's obviously played a lot. And I think a change of scenery seems to be doing well for him.
When did I miss the Charleston Rambo news? That must have
been out for a while.
No, I know it. I mean, it's been there forever. He's in Miami. But that I don't know, maybe that day I was busy or I wasn't on, I don't remember that. Was that pretty quickly after the year ended, Bruce?
Yeah, because he was there for the whole spring, and they really liked what they saw. They said it kept on getting better and better. So I definitely think it's an interesting, it's an interesting fit there. De'Ara King can really throw the ball around, and they already have one really good receiver in Mike Harley and a pretty good tight end in Will Mallory. So I think this offense has a chance to take a big step forward, especially there. And they feel like, he had some problems with drops at OU, but he's a really big speed guy. And they said he's continued to get stronger there. So they like what they've seen. I know Manny Diaz was really high on him after how he improved from the first scrimmage to the second and then to the third each time.
With Miami as a whole, I mean, De'Ara King got hurt, towards the end of last year. And, he was kind of the big promise for them finally having, a steady Eddie at quarterback, which they hadn't for a long, long time at Miami. Have they started to really hit the ground running again with Manny Diaz, with the transfers they're getting, with De'Ara King coming back? And maybe, I don't think they're going to be Miami of 2001 anytime soon, but at least being a team that can contend year in, year out for the conference title?
Yeah, if they can continue to get better on the offensive line, I think that's a big piece of that. That's been lacking for really the last, basically the last 15 years. And they feel like they've got more depth there now. I think it's a process they got to continue to recruit. They obviously got to keep more of the top players from South Florida home, that's honestly, it's an uphill climb at this point, So, but I definitely think he is an upgrade from where they were under Mark Richt, where basically they were good on defense, and that was on the Manny Diaz side of the ball, and they were really, really shaky on offense. And now I feel like they've definitely made strides on offense to right that and get that sorted out.
Eric Gray from, again, Tennessee to Oklahoma. Kennedy Brooks is back after opting out last year. My God. I mean, it's like all the toys, bells, and whistles for Lincoln Riley. Bruce, I know you've covered LSU heavily, and obviously 2 years ago they won the national title. What is right now kind of the mood on campus with all of what's happened in the accusations and allegations within the football program? Are they in simmer mode, or are they kind of in kind of a defensive mode?
That's a good question. I'll be honest, though, not being down there, I couldn't really speak to exactly that part of it. I think it's even, it's university-wide issues too. So it's not just, it's not just in the football program. It's really the whole university. A lot of those issues were brought to light, I think, over the last, it goes back to Les Miles. It probably goes back even before that. And I just think some of the things, how they were handled, they do not sit well with a lot of people there. And so it's going to be interesting to see what other steps the university takes going forward, because, some of the people who were reprimanded are people who've been there for a long, long time. And Verge Osbury played there in the 80s and is probably, I mean, one of his closest friends is the AD there now, Scott Woodward. So it's a really messy situation, and we'll see if it's in simmer mode or if it's gonna bubble up again even further.
Do you see any comparisons with what happened at Baylor at LSU?
I mean, there's certainly some. I think one of the differences you'd hear is, like, some of these cases, it wasn't necessarily the football staff getting involved and doing things. It was you still have the same issues of, like, just an inept Title IX situation that was not prepared to handle anything. I think from what you heard from the investigation out of Baylor was more of that coaches were actively involved in this. In this case, it felt like there was breakdowns in the administration side of it, not necessarily in the coaching side. Taking out, I mean, look, the Les Miles component is a different component than in terms of some really inappropriate behavior with student workers. I mean, to me, that wasn't something you had on the Baylor side, at least in my recollection. It's been a while, honestly, since, I've kind of thought about that whole side of that scandal. But in terms of this scandal, I think there's some similarities with the university and athletic department breakdowns, but I think there were breakdowns mostly in different ways.
Bruce, thank you very much. Good stuff. For college football transfer portal top 50, theathletic.com. And I'll tell you this, Bruce, and I don't know if I've ever told you this before, and Max is on with us a lot during college football and others. It is the only, other than the site we work for that is a premium section site, but it's the only media outlet that I pay money to be a part of is theathletic.com. It's the only one. And you guys have done an incredible job, and we have you on many times. We appreciate you as well.
Well, I appreciate it. It's very, very kind of you to say that, and I definitely appreciate the support on it. So thanks again for having me. It's always good talking to you.
You too. That's Bruce Feldman, theathletic.com. The top 50. Again, number one, Eric Gray, running back who went from Tennessee to Oklahoma. Oklahoma picked up 3 guys from Tennessee. Tyreke Stevenson, defensive back, Georgia to Miami 2. Henry To'o from Tennessee, not yet has made a decision. That's interesting since it's May. Jermaine Johnson, defensive end, Georgia, get to Florida State. And Siaka Apu, from LSU, the defensive nose tackle, to Baylor at number 5. If you look at teams in the Big 12, I'll do this quickly, I know we have a break, who are players added to this conference. The number 1 ranked player in this list, the number 5 player in this list, the number 20 player, the quarterback from Oregon to Texas Tech. The number 21 player, an offensive lineman from Memphis to TCU. Number 25, Doug Nestor, offensive lineman, Virginia Tech to West Virginia. Now I think we're at 5 or 6. TJ Carter, Memphis to TCU. Little package deals going there, the defensive back. Julius Brents from Iowa, defensive back to Kansas State. Let's see here. Florida State, Paul, put up a lot of money to get those guys, didn't they? Where I don't see.
They lost.
I don't see the Huskers in one damn guy. Wanya, Tennessee to Oklahoma. That mentioned those 2. Of course, the one that's really interesting. Now he was a retirement, wasn't it? Grant Calcaterra, and then he had to. I think he had to leave OU to go to SMU along with Mordecai. Jaquan Amos, the defensive back, Villanova to Iowa State. There's another Big 12 player. And then we mentioned Brewer the opposite way, and Keontae Ingram, Texas to USC the opposite way as well. All right. The 3:28 is the time. Coming up at 3:45, Brian Etheridge is going to help us out a little bit with the latest. His ear has been on the ground when it comes to not only where we are now that Nikki Collin is a part of the women's basketball program and running the mothership there, but also some things he's heard from even his ears on the ground to the AAU to other recruiting as well. One note later on, the NFL Players Association has come back and hammered the NFL. And again, they've got their long-term deal on the workout policy involving Juwan James, who we've talked about, the young man from Denver who hurt himself away from the facility. Just kind of watch, see how that simmers a little bit, if in fact that might lead to some changes. Although the NFL, hey, you work out with us, something happens here on our turf, we take care of you. You go away. This isn't like he was riding some like moped. He wasn't riding a gator. He wasn't snow skiing. you know? But that's going to be something that should be interesting to watch over the next few weeks as well. This is Sikkim 365 Radio. Waco Custom Marketplace, the weekend is here. Some of you are throwing graduation parties. Some of you are just wanting to enjoy maybe something to cook because the weather is so nice. And maybe you're starting to have even family get-togethers as well, along with the graduation, either college or high school. They have a custom department for it comes to their bakery when it comes to baked bread every single day. Fresh baked bread, fresh baked kolaches every day. Sweets and treats every day inside where they are with the bakery, and outside on the floor, the main core of the office, the business, you have all sorts of incredible bread, even cookie cakes, among other things as well. And then in the back, there's the butcher shop. You can get custom cut steaks, bacon wrapped fillets as thick as you want, or maybe you don't want it 1.5 inches or 2 inches thick. Oh my goodness, just imagine how tasty those are. And you want ribeyes cut bone in or not, they can do that as well. 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches, or maybe you don't like them that thick. They'll cut them how you want them. Waco Custom Marketplace, plus seafood, pork, and poultry as well.